George Friedman, author of The Next Decade. George, you write a lot about America, its role in the world. How important has America's technology sector been in strengthening its economy, and what will the role of technology in America be in terms of the next 10 years?
Well, technology has been critical. It is American culture. It's not the Coca-Cola that swept the world, it's the personal computer. And the personal computer was a quintessentially American machine. It redefined reason in the simplest way and also allowed individual empowerment rather than group empowerment. And it did one other thing. It required that you know English in order to program it. And it created a revolution in the world that anybody who wanted to manage these machines had to learn English. And in learning English, they read the text, the American method of management, everything else. And that transformed the world. Right now, we're in a strange position. We're like in the 1970s. In the 1970s, the world was populated by mainframes, and the scientific and technological breakthrough that would create the 1980s and the PC was just underway. Right now, we're in the process of extrapolating technologies down to almost a reductio ad absurdum. The iPad is a lovely machine. It's essentially a personal computer with a built-in keyboard. Very cool. Twitter is another way of doing email. These things are not fundamental breakthroughs. The changes that are going to be taking place are in the laboratories now. Things like non-silicon, non-binary based computing, changes in pharmaceuticals and other things like that. They're not ready for prime time. The scientists are working on them. They'll be ready in about 10 years for the technologists. 10 years after that, the marketing people will take over.
You've said very controversially and very intriguingly that the computer is culturally an American product. So two questions out of that. Firstly, would you also argue that the internet is a kind of American colonial product? And secondly, can other countries do computers and the internet?
Oh, sure. I mean, look, there was a period of time when all culture was English. The British developed the battleship.
Yeah, I remember that very well.
So did a lot of other countries. It's not that other countries can't imitate it, but in imitating it, they buy into the basic premise. So if you were a German, what you would really be studying was metaphysics. You don't do metaphysics on a computer. You crunch numbers, you do graphics, you do things in a certain way. When you begin to buy into that, you begin to buy into the cultural values. The internet was not only an American invention, it was a Department of Defense invention. It's, of course, changed the entire world, but it's changed the American world in a way that would be uniquely American. We Americans want to communicate as individuals. We want to have information constantly. We don't take 3-hour lunches, like the Italians do. We move fast, we think fast, we don't think deep. So all of these things took the essence of American culture, congealed them in machines, and spread them around the world.
That's a beautiful or a very troubling image as well. Who can do that, though? Who can congeal or recongeal American culture and do it better than the Americans? Can the Koreans? Can the Chinese?
They can build the machines. They don't do the science.
What about the Japanese?
They mostly don't do the science, yes, because the Japanese were the ones who bet on artificial intelligence in the 1980s and had their heads handed to them. Look, it comes in 3 stages. There's the core science, the development of the microchip. There's the creation of technologies built around it. There's the marketing, finding new ways to do the same thing over and over again. The Americans are superb at the science. The technology, others can do sometimes cheaply and better, but we're great at marketing. Steve Jobs' ability to make the iPad appear a revolutionary event is simply a stunning thing to see.
And who competes with marketing? You're an expert on global culture. You've written a book or a series of books about the world. Who most effectively competes with America on the marketing front?
Many imitate, very few compete effectively. What basically happens is we'll put an iPad, then a bunch of other countries will put out tablets. But it's interesting, Acer wanted to put out a tablet years ago. They had it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't penetrate. But
the Germans do it with cars. I mean, they've created desirable commodities, BMWs and Mercedes, in the way that
Sure.
Jobs has created the iPad or the iPhone?
Well, the way I would put it is that Henry Ford invented the car, and the Germans invented the luxury car. And that's a nice thing to do. But we're talking about technology when we talk about automobiles, it's a century old. When we're talking about the evolution of cutting edge technology, what we're seeing now is the maturing of the personal computer, its transmogrification into mobile devices and so on and so forth. All logical extensions, but not dramatic technological or scientific breakthroughs. And we're now going to the second phase of computing. We've begun the first phase with the binary concept, 0 1s on a chip. That can't support the kind of technologies we're going to have in the future, robotics in particular. You can't, no matter how many of these you'd run parallel, it's not going to be enough, and you can't program to them. So we're going to be seeing new technologies, biologics, other materials, neural net systems, and so on. But we're not ready for that. That the Americans will do. The other countries are going to be very good at taking that and beating us at the price, beating us at design, beating us at a number of things. But in the end, marketing is a cultural thing. Marketing is not about technology. Marketing is understanding the culture you're dealing with, the people you're dealing with, and understanding how to supply them with what they need. It's kind of a national thing, but because American culture is an underlying international culture, American companies do it very well.